Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session called The Anatomy of a Great User Experience. I'm Ingrid, and I'm the head of product design at FullStory. And I was hoping to be on site at the event with you today, but I'm under the weather. So instead, I'm coming to you virtually from Salt Lake City via recording. And I'll share a couple of things about myself before we get started. Prior to joining FullStory, I've spent the last 2 decades designing and building products and experiences in a wide range of industries, spanning from marketing automation to cybersecurity to crypto. And what I've learned is that although the context is different for different people in different industries and settings, people are still people. Whether you are a consumer shopping for a new pair of jeans or an IT professional looking to secure devices, yes, your context is different, but the principles that underpin a great experience are universal and they transcend industries and personas. And we're going to talk about what those principles are today. So, first of all, raise your hand if you flew to Atlanta to attend Spark. And if you did, how did you choose what airline to fly with? Did you make that decision based on who would actually get you to your destination? Probably not, right? You kind of assume that's going to be the case. And I'm guessing that no one used that as a deciding factor. There's a bunch of other criteria that you might consider when you decide which airline to fly with. So there's things like price, there's number of stops, there's loyalty points or sky miles, there's the location of the airport, so convenience. But I'm guessing that in all those considerations, there's an underlying assumption that the airline will get you safely from point A to point B. So imagine this, it's early morning, you're traveling for work, and you're just arriving at your gate to wait for your flight. Your luggage is currently being loaded onto the plane. You have your boarding pass ready to go on your phone. Your flight looks like it's going to depart on time. So you feel pretty confident that in a few hours you're going to be at your destination. But as you sit down at the gate, you notice that you're getting hungry. You had a light breakfast before you left your house, but that was a couple of hours ago at this point. So you check the time and realize that there's not going to be enough time to go grab some food before boarding starts. And you don't want to be one of those people just running last minute to catch their flight. So then, as you're sitting there thinking about how nice it would be to have something to eat, a door opens right behind you. And out comes a flight attendant with a rolling cart with a bunch of boxes on it. She stops over by the first row of seats by the boarding area, and you realize that what she's carrying on the tray is boxes of fresh donuts and coffee. She eventually makes her way to you, and next thing you know, you're sipping on a hot cup of coffee and biting into a fresh donut. Your day just went from good to great. So the donut is delicious and exactly what you needed, and now you don't have to worry about being hungry when you board the plane. So far, it looks like it's going to be a really good day. However, as you take your last bite, a voice emerges from the speaker right above you, and it's the last thing anyone wants to hear as they're about to board their flight. Your flight has been canceled. So, how do you feel about your experience with the airline so far? You're probably not super happy. I mean, the donuts and coffee, that was a really nice surprise. But the one thing you had hired the airline to do, they didn't deliver on. They didn't get you to your destination on time. And so the value that you had expected wasn't there. Does that mean that you'll never fly again? No, of course you will, because you care about the outcome. You love to travel, you have places to go, and you're going to hire the airline every time to get you there. You are invested in the outcome. And that is the foundational piece that motivates you to ignore the inconveniences that sometimes happen. The value that the airline delivers is one that you care deeply about. So, at the foundation of a great user experience, there needs to be value, like taking me to my destination or whatever the value proposition is for your product. And you can only deliver something of value if you're either solving a problem or delivering a benefit that your users or customers care about. It's why they come to you in the first place. And as we're talking about the other elements of a great user experience, it's implied that if value isn't there in the first place, then none of these things we're going to talk about really matter. And the more users care about the value that you deliver, the more willing they are to tolerate inconveniences along the way. So the value that the airline delivers, like we talked about, is getting me to my destination. And this example was kind of an extreme one because for most of us, we don't have the luxury of offering something that users care so deeply about. A few bad experiences isn't going to stop me from flying, but for almost any other product or experience, users are much less forgiving. And most of us find ourselves in a scenario where we have to prove our value before users are willing to put in the effort. So, if we've established that value sits at the core of a great user experience, how do we understand whether what we offer to customers is valuable? Or if we're planning on building something new, how do we understand if that idea might be valuable? This is tricky because this question is more attitudinal than behavioral in nature, which means that it's harder to measure. So let's just for fun talk about the wrong way of measuring this. Because our brains are wired to try to find the shortest path to answers. So as humans, we tend to think, well, let's just ask users if they think this might be valuable. That seems really efficient. So we do that and we ask people things like, hey, this thing that we're thinking about building, would you use it? Do you find it valuable? And people usually go, yeah, definitely. That sounds great. The problem with this is that people are terrible at accurately predicting what they might do in the future. And they generally just want to be nice. And so you'll get a lot of false positives if you ask this question. And you'll probably find out the hard way that people weren't actually that excited about that thing that you were building. The better way to understand whether or not something will be valuable is to get laser focused on the problem or opportunity space. What evidence do you have that the problem you're trying to solve is one that a lot of people care deeply about? So, to understand how to build for value, here are some questions to ask. And you can ask these questions whether you are building a new feature, making improvements to an existing product or experience, or if you're building a brand new product. So, number one, am I solving a problem or delivering a benefit to my customers or users? We want to look for evidence to support our belief that this is something worth investing our time and energy in. And again, ideally a mix of both behavioral and attitudinal evidence. Number two, is the problem strongly felt by a significant number of people? Look at the volume and the frequency of the evidence to get a sense of how many, how often. Sometimes, as we know, the loudest voices get all the attention, but the amount of noise doesn't always reflect the magnitude of the problem or opportunity. Number three, are people making an effort to solve this problem or achieve this benefit today? So the most reliable evidence that this problem or opportunity is worth investing in is that people are making an effort today, sometimes in highly inconvenient ways. It's been said that the best shortcut to building a SaaS startup is to take a process that is currently done in spreadsheets and building a product on top of it. And there's a reason for that because the need has been proven. People are doing it today, but if we can make it easier and help people save time, we might be able to convince them to buy our new product. So if we've established that we are in fact offering something of value to users, the next question is, as a user, how easily can I access it? How much effort does it take to actually get to value? So like we talked about earlier, there's a correlation between how much someone cares about something and how much effort they're willing to put in, how much mental gymnastics they're willing to subject themselves to in order to get to what we offer. I will willingly deal with the occasional inconveniences of airline travel because I care about the outcome. I love traveling. I will not stop traveling. But like I mentioned, not everyone enjoys the patience and tolerance of their customers. So let's use the DMV as an example, which here in the US is where you go to register your car or get a driver's license. It's not easy going to the DMV. They are famous for having record long lines, not the friendliest staff sometimes, and they tend to require endless documents to do whatever you want them to do. It's actually so bad that it has created a whole new niche of businesses that offer the same services as the DMV, but they charge more for it. It's also a much easier process. It takes less time and it's less effort. In fact, the ease of use factor is their entire business model. So, in almost every circumstance, people have a choice, whether that is going to a competitor or maybe not using your product or website at all. And the less they know about you and what you offer, the less patience they will have in dealing with whatever obstacles get in the way. So the initial willingness to invest their time and effort is usually much lower than you would expect. So a great user experience must offer a clear path to value. This is not a controversial statement. I don't think any of you would disagree with that. No one wants to intentionally make a product difficult to use. When things get in the way, it's typically because of maybe lack of consideration or miscommunication. Maybe we're dealing with a ton of complexity. And so the bigger problem might actually be on understanding what it's like to be on the customer or user side of that experience and understanding how we might address the issue. I think about ease of use as the amount of friction or obstacles that exist between the user and the value that we offer. And these obstacles are things that our customers have to overcome to get to what we offer on the other side. It could be complexity, it could be unanswered questions, it could be usability or cost or gaps in our offering. What they have in common is that they present friction in the journey to get to value. And we want to remove as much of this as we can. And out of everything we've talked about so far, ease of use might be the hardest thing to get right. Because while usability is pretty straightforward to diagnose because it's so transactional in nature, getting our customers to use our products is a mix of tactical things and behavioral science. Just because people can doesn't mean they will. Because when we are trying to get users to learn something or do something new, we are introducing change. And change is hard for all of us. It requires our brains to do something it hasn't done before, and we tend to resist that. It's like exercising. I have to make an effort. So let's talk about the behavioral science part of ease of use. BJ Fogg is a professor at Stanford and the founder of their behavior design lab. And he has developed a formula for behavior change. B equals MAP. He argues that there are three elements that need to exist for a behavior to occur: motivation, ability, and prompt. And when a behavior doesn't occur, it's because one more of these elements are missing. So as we talk about usability, what we often miss is the motivation element. Just because we make something usable, it doesn't mean that the user is motivated to do something or that the particular feature is desirable or that it speaks to them in a way that is motivating. So if you look at this graph, it lays out the behavior model in more detail. So in order for a behavior to occur, you need both high motivation and high ability. And the action line in the middle shows where prompts either fail or where they succeed. So for example, when you prompt a user to do something and there is low motivation and the task is hard to do, the behavior will most likely not happen. But when you present a prompt and there's high motivation and the task is easy to do, the behavior will most likely happen. And this is another reason why Knowing our users, both through attitudinal and behavioral data and feedback, is so important because it helps us better understand them so we can tailor the experience in a way that isn't just low friction, but that also speaks to their motivation. So when you think ease of use, don't just think ability. Also think, what will it take for this behavior to happen? And the first question we want to ask is, what do we want the user or customer to do? What is the behavior that we want to see? Number two, what are the obstacles in achieving this today? We want to understand where the friction is occurring. And this is an area where FullStory really becomes a superpower because you have the ability to look at trends and behaviors at a high level. Where are people dropping off? What does the most common journey look like? And then you can zoom in and look at individual users to get a better understanding of what it is exactly that is causing people to struggle. Number three, how can we speak to their motivation? We want to understand what motivates a user to complete this task in our journey and see if we can somehow design an experience that speaks to this motivation. Now let's move on to the last tier in the pyramid. And I want to start with a question. What product or company could you be the paid spokesperson for? Think about that for a minute. Is there a product or experience that you talk to your friends and coworkers about, even though the company isn't paying you anything to do so? And if that's the case, why is it that you brag about this company or product so much? When we become raving fans of a product or service, it's usually because we feel an emotional connection. They either meet a need that resonates with us, or we feel understood and like we belong. Maybe they went above and beyond to address a problem you didn't even know you had. This kind of emotional connection is not rational. It doesn't necessarily mean that this product is better than any other product. It doesn't necessarily matter. This company or product has managed to get our loyalty by making us feel understood or exceeding our expectations. I call this top tier of the pyramid delight, and it means establishing an emotional connection with your audience. And the impact of truly delivering on delight can be pretty significant. So when you were at the airport and the flight attendant was handing out donuts, many of us would probably call that a delightful experience, at least in the moment. But at the end, the experience at the airport was a negative one because even the donuts were delightful, the value that you had hired the airline to deliver, getting you to your destination, wasn't there. So delight at the expense of value doesn't work. There's a reason it's at the top of the pyramid, because it stands on the shoulders of the other two. Only when you deliver value and make it easily accessible will delight truly be impactful. That being said, if you deliver value and ease of use without delight, you might miss the opportunity to build a lasting impression, to build loyalty and emotional connection with your audience. And so you need all three. As we wrap up, I'm going to walk you through a simple interaction that some of you might be familiar with. And I want you to think about why some people find this experience so delightful. So for those of you who have an iPhone, raise your hand if you know what this is or if you have experienced this feature. What's happening here is that Abby is trying to reset her Twitter password, and she has to confirm her phone number. So Twitter sends her a code via text that she has to enter into the input field on the screen. But as she taps the input field to enter the code, there is an option to add the code directly from her messages with one tap. Now, I've seen people rave about this feature, which is very, very simple, but it's such an unexpected and thoughtful touch that people notice and remember because it saves them the mental gymnastics and sometimes frustrating experience of having to copy paste or trying to remember the code from their messages. So let's talk about building for delight. What does that look like? The first question to ask, or the first thing to think about, is addressing the unspoken. The examples I've talked about with the donuts and verification code had something in common. They were based on a convenience that was unspoken. I was hungry, but I didn't tell the flight attendant that. And the same thing with the verification code. That was surfaced up to me when I needed it. I didn't have to go look for it. Number two, apply empathy. This is founded on empathy and being proactive about what our customers want and need. And number three, go beyond the happy path and recognize that users sometimes take different paths and things shouldn't break and be less usable if people make unexpected choices. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and that you will go back and build experiences that are valuable, easy to use, and delightful using FullStory as your superpower. And I won't be here in person to take questions, but I would love to hear from you. So if you have questions, you are more than welcome to email me. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day at Spark.